I'll now call to order the Tuesday, January 17th, 2012 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. Welcome to all of those in attendance here at Carnegie, those watching us on CityLink or at siouxfalls.org. To begin today's meeting, I'm going to ask that we have a moment of silence in memory of Governor Bill Janklow. Thank you. I'd now ask Vernon Brown to say a few words.
Thank you, Sue. Sue had asked me to just say a couple words about former Governor Bill Janklow. I had the pleasure of covering him for more than 8 years during his leadership, and I will be very honest, tell you it wasn't always fun, but it was always very educational. And most importantly, he taught me to listen. And some of the things that I always heard him say about government is that we should always strive for creative solutions and serving in areas where the private sector can't do it, and those services should never be burdensome. But probably the most important thing I ever heard him say, and say it repeatedly, was that we should, as government, always be sure we take care of those least able to take care of themselves, and he emphasized that a lot through his leadership. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. We'll now have staff report by Interim City Clerk Sue Roust.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Council. A few items to update you on today. The 2012 Municipal Election Information and Campaign Finance Guidelines book and forms are now posted on our website. And just this afternoon, we got the new book hot off the press, and I'm very pleased with it. We, in the past, have had 2 books that were given to candidates, and now it's all been combined in one. The front part of it includes all the information that's in this trifold of frequently asked questions that we gave you earlier. So the front section of this book includes all the general information, and then it has the campaign finance. And just one other thing I wanted to show you is, before there was a really kind of confusing about individuals can give to this and this group can give to this, and it was kind of hard to follow, and we just replaced it with a chart, which we hope will make it very easy for candidates to understand what the rules are. On your agenda for tonight, a couple notes. The Planning Department has requested that items 16 and 18 be deferred. They are still working with property owners in those cases, and that's in your red notes. Also, we are going to have 3 items that will require six votes to be added to the agenda. Item 21 is revisions to the campaign finance ordinance, which were approved by the Public Services Committee last Monday. Unfortunately, as your deadlines are right now, a group that meets on Monday afternoon has missed the deadline for the following week's meeting, and so that one does have to be brought to the agenda by an affirmative vote of 6 of you to begin discussion. And then items 22 and 23 also will need to be voted to bring onto the agenda. They would implement the new organizational structure for City Council staff and authorize the beginning of the hiring process for new staff. And we will have copies of the organizational chart available for the public and for all of you at that time. Just a reminder, Breakfast Club is tomorrow morning. When you have your opportunity to meet with the Minnehaha County, Lincoln County, and all the school districts within the City of Sioux Falls. The city is hosting it this year, and so I hope we'll have good representation. Tomorrow's program is on the Safe Home Project, and it will include a tour of Safe Home for those who are interested. This Friday, the legislature will be hearing, Senate local government will be hearing Senate Bill 58, which would provide for voting centers and the use of electronic poll books. That is one of your legislative priorities, and I will be going to Pierre to testify for that. And I would be just intending them to tell you that that is one of your legislative priorities, and we believe it will be a great cost-saving measure for the City of Sioux Falls. I will have to register as a lobbyist to transmit that information on your behalf, and I'm getting that taken care of. There's one other question that has come up in the last week that I just wanted to get your feedback on. I don't know how long it's been going on, but for a little while at least, on your agendas, we have been including the names of the 2 council members who signed off on agenda approval forms. And some council members have wondered about that. It perhaps makes it seem that they are sponsoring that legislation or that action when they're actually just the 2 people who happened to walk through the door when we needed 2 signatures. Other departments, when they make a request, the department is listed, not the individuals who brought it forward. And when I asked about why when it's the council we include the names, staff told me as best as they could remember it kind of came as a request from council members to start identifying them. But now we're getting some unease about it. My recommendation would be that it just lists that an item is coming from the city council, not individual names, but we wanted your direction on whether you had a strong feeling one way or another about that.
Thoughts? Councilor Urbanbach.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that the person that's here the most is the one that's going to sponsor the most legislation in the way that we do this, because you really do. I mean, if I walk through, somebody says, hey, sign this, half the time, I mean, I do look, but I don't remember because it's not something I'm necessarily married to or whatever. I don't know. I think generic is okay with me.
Dean? Councilor Karski. Sorry.
Either way is fine. And I'm of the thought process, too, that if you signed it, it does appear that you did sponsor it, when in fact you're just allowing it to be brought to the council. So I think that putting the council as a general sponsor on there would probably make, I don't know, I like that idea better.
Any other comments? So can I say we have consensus then that we'll try city council, brought forward by city council? I see people shaking their heads in the affirmative. I think we'll go with that route then. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Jameson.
So the next RV issue that I have would be just, what, I'm just saying, parking would be, you guys would cover me?
You bet.
All right.
Any other questions or comments for interim city clerk Roust? All right, we now will have a report on our last Public Services Committee meeting by Councilor Anderson Jr.
Okay. We will be having another Public Services Committee meeting actually today. We will continue to review the fraud control policy, the ethics ordinance amendments, and recodification. And that's what we'll continue to look at here today. With the last public services, I don't have those minutes at this moment. But on that one, we did move the campaign finance ordinance forward to the City Council.
Any questions or comments for Councilor Anderson Jr.? Thank you. We'll now go on to City Council open discussion. Councilor Rolfing.
We do have an urban ag meeting, part of the land use subcommittee of the urban ag, or of the land use committee this Friday at 2:30 at the main library. So everyone is welcome. We will be taking, as part of that, some testimony, public testimony. So everyone is welcome. Please come on down.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Entenmann.
I'd just like to make a personal note here. I'm really happy to announce that my second son and his wife had a strapping baby boy last night, and a great little boy, and his name is Jack Oliver Entenmann.
Congratulations. Any other? Councilor Jameson.
On a more serious note, I guess, yesterday I had an hour-and-a-half meeting with Dennis Annison, who is on the Charter Revision Commission. Dennis agreed to meet, and we had a very good discussion, I should say. I made some headway I wanted to report, mostly with the staffing that the council is in charge of, the city clerk, the budget analyst, the auditor, our council operations director, whoever that might be, the assistant city clerks, and the other budget, or the other auditors, assistant auditors. And Dennis came to understand better why the council is in charge of those individuals, and perhaps that the mayor is a little more removed than he may have thought the case would be. I made several attempts at the contract approval process. I'll need more help if we want to make further headway. My arguments did not sink in all the way. I did clarify some issues with him, and he was very receptive. And in fact, in some cases, I think I'll leave it to him to state later in January, when that meeting is, on why the last meeting went the way it went. Dennis isn't as bad a guy as I thought he was, I guess is probably what I wanted to say publicly. He has a lot of things that are on his plate, and he was trying to meet some other timetables, and he could not stay. And I think it just came off the wrong way, and the way that meeting went. So, but I'll leave that for him to explain. But either way, we did have a good hour-and-a-half discussion, and I think he's more educated on about what the council does and how we work and how it all mixes. And we discussed the city attorney and a proposal to that I've recommended. But what I wanted to relay more than anything is that if you're interested in any of these issues with charter revision, I think we're going to have to work and directly contact them and give them our side of the equation here. Help them understand our role in this government, because I think even Dennis appreciated that. He's a great business guy and has a business mentality on exactly how to get things done as fast as you can and make as much money as you possibly can. God bless him. But I don't know that he fully understood some of the mechanisms in our government. So I would encourage you to reach out to maybe some of those other Charter Revision Commission members and expose them to how the council works. Some of the things that happens down here in the weeds and all the details that most citizens don't ever get to understand. But again, the contract approval process has fallen on mostly deaf ears, so I need more help there if we want to make any headways. I'd appreciate some help. And then one other item, if I could.
Sure.
You know, last Monday we had, I think, quite an incident where I'm just not sure the comfort level or the process that we want to go down when we have citizens who come forward at public input and give comments about how they feel about what we're doing, and whether we want to take time at the end of the meeting to allow that exchange to occur, like what happened last week. It was awkward sitting here. I would actually love a chance to engage more with the public when they make comments, and or, you know, just the opportunity to engage. But how does everybody else feel? I mean, I felt awkward. I felt there was an attempt maybe to continue the conversation, but it got shut off by the rest of the council adjourning the meeting. I'd rather talk about it now so we have an understanding of how we're going to proceed in the future, so we manage it or engage. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I felt awkward about it, and I wanted to bring it up.
Comments? Councilor Brown.
In terms of public input, and I've shared this with some of you before, it's always seemed odd to me that we have public input at the front end of the meeting when we have people that have scheduled their time to come here for an agenda item, and then anyone on a whim can come down here and completely disrupt that schedule. I'm all for having public input, but I think that the place for it would be at the end of the meeting, which would also allow a better opportunity after that public input to engage them in conversations if you so wish after the meeting. But doing it on the front end of the meeting has never made much sense to me. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I just find that an odd spot for it.
Counselor Karski?
And I guess just as odd, I've often felt people come here and they bring valid questions or comments, and they're never addressed. They're just left hanging there. And there's no conversation between administration or the counselors when these people obviously would like to have a dialogue opened up, and the ability to question somebody or to address their concern when we sit here and we know why something is the way it is, but all they can do is question and we have no answer back to them. So putting it at the end and being able to have an open dialogue or a flow of information, I guess, I don't know if it's dangerous precedence. Maybe we, I don't want to have debates, but I guess I think that information should be shared between the council and the public when they do expect that.
Counselor Erpenbach?
Couple of things in response to that. Number one, the term never addressed is inappropriate because many times either the mayor or staff members in the audience will take that person's name and follow up either with email or phone calls. Sometimes if it's something to do with my district, I'll make direct contact with people. It just depends on what it is. And yeah, I think it does happen. Rex is talking in my ear, saying it happens all the time, and I believe that it does. I don't think anyone walks away from here going, I asked this question and I never got it answered. I think that folks are bringing valid points here. The other piece then I would challenge all of us to is that idea that public input is just that. It's really a time for us to shut up. It's the one time when people are allowed to just sit here and say whatever they think within reason, but to say what they think about what we're doing, and for us to not say back to them, well, you so-and-so, I think this. There's no debating involved. And I think that's a pretty important part of democracy. I think if you want to have a debate, if you want to have a town hall session at some point, some other time, great. But I don't think it's appropriate here. And to answer your question, Councilor Jameson, I was more than uncomfortable last Monday night. That was out of order. It was inappropriate. And it was embarrassing. As an individual and as a council, it was embarrassing to me to have that sort of dialogue happen. And I would apologize for the group, but I don't think I'm probably supported in that. But it was wrong on lots of levels. So that's my input.
Counselor Antoman?
So the question I would ask is that if you're talking about public input, do we continue to look at having that public input at the beginning of a session, or do we run the business session of the meetings, run the meetings, stop the meeting and adjourn, and at that time have public input following the meeting where we all concede that we're going to stay here, including the mayor, for a period of time, whether it be an hour or whatever we would have until that public input ended? Is that what you would suggest? Or, maybe that's a format that we should look at, or are we held by the way the meeting is set up now?
If I might, Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the agenda format is set by ordinance. We can set it whenever we want, but I'm not real excited about spending another hour here if we've met until 10 o'clock to listen to people complain about something. But it's certainly up for debate. I don't.
No, it's just, like you said, it's public input and question that I'm just asking what your thought was on it.
Yeah, it's up to us how we want our agenda to lay out.
Quite honestly, I don't, if I might, the way the meetings are held right now, I think for the most part, everything is, the public input session is given. We listen. I know I make notes. I ask a lot of questions of departments when questions come up along that line. I have no problem with the way that it is held right now. I was just wondering if somebody else had a better idea or not. I do listen to the input. If I think that there's some significant questions that are in there, I pose the questions to the department heads, and usually they do contact people. I think all of us have a tendency to do that. But
Counselor Anderson, Jr.?
I can also say I was quite concerned at the end of the meeting how that whole procedure went. I guess I'm going to ask a question also, and that is, we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. In that document or in those rules, are we able, or as the chair of the council, are you able to say no to the mayor as far as taking that gavel? When he wants to give up, is that something that he can just do and then reply on these?
Yeah, if he makes the request, it would be odd for me not to.
Because see, pretty much the rest of the council is pretty well tied. Our hands are tied as far as responding, but yet the mayor can give up a gavel and respond. And I just don't see that as being something that's productive in our meetings. I haven't seen that with this mayor or the previous mayor when these confrontations have occurred. So I guess I was looking for some type of direction through the rules that we use in governing these meetings.
Mrs. Roust?
I think if the chair of the meeting wants to give you the gavel, I think you have to take it, but you also have the ability then, since you are now chairing the meeting, to rule anything out of order if it's inappropriate.
Sorry.
Okay. Councilor Rolfing?
I feel that there was some uncomfortableness last week, but I'm wondering if there are some other cities that do something different. I'm thinking instead of maybe after the meeting that we maybe meet for 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour before for this kind of situation, or we look around the other cities that are our size or maybe not even our size and see what they're doing in this situation to see if they have a time set aside that would not conflict so much within the boundaries of the agenda for some give and take, and maybe get some ideas that way of how we might handle this situation. I wonder if we could ask Sue to take a look at that. Maybe we'll come up, maybe somebody else has already dealt with this, or we don't have to invent the wheel again.
Good idea. Councilor Jameson?
Well, lots of good discussion. Thank you for engaging. Maybe just a couple things. The input part is probably an important part of the process and not so much a debate. And maybe I'm wrong by thinking that we should engage at this meeting. Maybe there's another point that we need to work on better engagement with the citizens. We are here to take care of the business at hand. Allowing the citizens to give us their 2 cents worth is valuable time. And maybe if an individual has something they want engagement with one of us on, they can just fill out a card that we have available and they hand it to somebody, or they have a way to make sure that they get a phone number or an address, something that we can do to communicate with them. Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who do not want to be engaged with the council on camera. And how much time could we ever allow to fully engage and not give it just lip service? And then the other thing I would just probably say that it might be best if it's the consensus of the council, to have the council leadership mention our dissatisfaction with how that last meeting went and inform the mayor that, at least give him the heads up that it's not going to be deemed appropriate if he continues that, and so we don't have to gavel him. At least he knows that what our wishes are. Does that seem fair? I think
we'd be happy to have that discussion with the mayor. Also, that brought up a good point. Maybe we need to have information at the door as far as how to reach the different council members. We could either have some of our cards there, our business cards there, or else that listing from the buck slip that was in the water bills. We should have that available at these meetings, and probably along with the agendas, we could have that information available for the public. A lot of good ideas. Sue got her next assignment. And is there any other City Council open discussion? If not, we'll go on to today's presentations. Internal audit reports. Rich Oaksall, Lead Internal Auditor.
Good afternoon, City Council. I think we'll start with the shorter of the two reports, the school-based health clinic audit. And we do have the management teams from both the health department and fleet here. If there's some questions that come up, they'd be happy to step in and answer those. The school-based health clinic was a request from management. We put that on our audit plan. We specifically looked at the Terry Redland health-based or a school-based health clinic. It's just been in operation for just a little over a year. It opened in November of 2010. And the primary scope of this audit was looking at the cash handling to see that that was proper and done according to city procedures. And as far as the results on page 3 there, overall we determined that the internal controls in place were operating effectively to provide reasonable assurance that the cash is received, recorded, and deposited properly. As part of our scope, we also looked briefly at some of the administrative requirements, especially as it applies to the contract employees, the certified nurse practitioners that are used in that clinic, and our audit issues dealt with that. The first one was at the bottom of page 3. We found that the CNP contracts, the certified nurse practitioner, were being executed about 2 months after the work was started. So we recommended that the work not start until contracts were in place, and you can see the Health Department agreed with that, and that will be integrated with the next contract cycle. And then at the top of page 4, also dealing with the certified nurse practitioner, when they receive a bill for the services, there is no way for that person that's approving that invoice to check to see that, okay, is that a proper invoice that we're getting to pay for those services? So we recommended that they keep a detailed record of the days and hours worked by all the contract workers. So that way there'd be something for the person that is reviewing that invoice to determine if that is a correct invoice. They could look and make sure that the hours that are being billed are for the hours that are actually worked. So that was it. It was a narrow scope audit. It was we didn't have a lot of earth-shaking findings, but we think we made some suggestions for improvement. And I'll be happy to take any questions on that.
Questions for Rich? I see none.
Okay. And also want to thank the Health Department for their cooperation on that. So. The next one deals with our fleet division, specifically the fuel. And on page 4 there of the report, we talked a little bit about that fleet division of Public Works. And they operate as a what we call a internal service fund or revolving fund. In other words, the accounting is like a business. They have to have customers. They bill for their services, and they have to have they add on to the cost in order to make sort of like a profit, and that money that they make is used for, for example, capital improvements down the road that they have some funds set aside. In the middle of page 4, you can see how much the city purchased in fuel. In 2009, we had about $1.5 million of fuel, about $2 million in 2010. And as of October 2011, when we did the audit, we were up to about $2.3 million. So the city spends a lot of money for fuel. And fleet adds on about 6% to that, to their customers. Most of their customers are internal, in other words, city departments. They have a few external customers, such as the Minnehaha County, Metro Communications, the zoo, et cetera. Our findings are on page 5, and the management response is at the very end of the report. On page 10 and 11, you can see the management response. But I'd like to draw your attention to a few of the recommendations. The first recommendation we had on page 5 there was when they do the fuel reconciliations each month, we recommended that the overages and shortages be thoroughly reviewed and that they be adjusted timely. Because what we were finding is sometimes those adjustments would be carried forward for a number of months, and they weren't necessarily being reviewed and adjusted on a timely basis. And for the most part, management agreed with that recommendation. The finding number 2 and the recommendations are on page 5 and 6 there. When an employee needs fuel for their vehicle, the internal control that's set up is like a credit card system. It has the appearance of a credit card. You have one that's specific to the vehicle, and the other card is a employee fuel card. And you have to have both of those cards in order for the fuel to dispense into the vehicle. What we're finding is that that database of fuel cards needs to be cleaned up. We had a lot of, when we analyzed the cards, we found a lot of cards that were issued to employees that were no longer employed, but they still had an active card. We had some vehicle cards that the vehicle, specifically we had 252 vehicle fuel cards that could not be matched to an active vehicle. Now, it sounds alarming, but the idea is that you have to have both cards to get fuel. If you just have, say, an employee is terminated and he still has a card, it's not like he can walk up to a city fuel dispenser and get fuel to come out. You need both cards. So there is a control in place. But the problem was we didn't see any formal policy. When an employee would need a fuel card, they'd just come to Fleet and say, I need a fuel card. We recommend that they have a policy and that the person's supervisor would have to sign off on that to show that they needed a fuel card. And also when they terminate employment, we recommend that the process be changed so that when somebody's employment is terminated, that card would be deactivated, such as it is with an employee ID card. When somebody leaves city employment, that is on the list of things that need to be done. Just like you have to turn in your keys and you have to turn in your cell phone and the whole list of things. So we recommend that be added to that checklist to strengthen that control. And then on page 7 and 8, I'm not going to go over the 4 opportunities for improvement, but the last one there, number 4, we recommended that Fleet work with IT to find a way, if we can just use these employee ID cards, if we can get away from having that employee fuel card. If there's a way to do that, we thought that'd be more efficient. It would be a cost savings to the city, and management agreed to see if we can find a solution to that. So that would be kind of the long-term solution, that the way we'd want to go, that you would have a card that is specific to the vehicle, and then you would use your employee ID card for the second card. So overall, we thought it was a good audit. We got good cooperation from management, good discussion. A couple of the recommendations they didn't necessarily agree with, but we certainly had an honest discussion about that, and we appreciate their attitude and their good dialogue on that. So if there's any questions, I'll attempt to answer, or the management team from Fleet is also here. So
Questions? Councilor Antoman?
Rich, on the employee card, you said it takes the vehicle gas card as well as the employee card to activate the fuel system, right?
yes.
And those employee cards can be deactivated, so they do not work at all in the pump, correct?
Yes, they can be
Okay,
deactivated,
so,
yeah.
and your recommendation was just that be one of the checklists when
Yes.
an employee is terminated, is that it?
Part of the procedure that we have, that we use for, employee ID cards, cell phones, keys, all that stuff.
The purpose is just to verify that it was done. It supposedly is done, but it's just to verify.
Yeah, we wanted that at the beginning, that when somebody needs a card, that they fill out a form and have the supervisor approve that, so that Public Works knows that, the supervisor said this person needs a card, and then when they're no longer employed by the city, that the process is in place so that card gets deactivated. Okay. And we think that would help clean up that database. Okay.
Councilor Rolfing?
Rich, when a vehicle goes to the happy heavens
Yes.
with us or is sold, do we automatically pull that card and we're sure we get that card? So that somebody can't go like you did and just say, well, they're not using that card anymore?
Well, when we looked at the database, we found there were some cards out there, not, physically we didn't find the card, but we can no longer match it to an active vehicle. So I'm not sure physically what happens to the card when a vehicle is surplused, but...
Because I remember you saying that the cards, or somebody saying something about the cards always stay with the vehicle. Correct?
I think that would be a fair statement. They normally would stay in the vehicle. Would that be a correct statement?
Council, Dean Borkart, representing Public Works. To answer your question, there are, like Rich had mentioned, there are outside entities that use our facilities. Their vehicle cards when they dispose of their vehicles, we wouldn't have access to those cards, but any city vehicle that is surplused or sold and brought through to be surplused at fleet, at the surplus sale, unless it was outright sold. There are certain divisions, the police department doesn't run all their vehicles through the city or through fleet. You know, if they dispose of a vehicle or donate that to the county, we need to have a little bit better way to track that. But as far as a normal surplus vehicle that is done with use with the city that is sold at surplus auction, that card would come with the vehicle to fleet as it's deactivated at that time and then placed on the surplus sale. So that would be the normal way. We need to make sure we try and keep, you know, we'll try and track reports for outside entities that are accessing our fuel sites in their vehicles to make sure that they check theirs, that they're still active, and we will work with IT to develop a report that can help us on that.
Well, they'll get billed for it. I'm not so worried about that because they'll get billed for the gas. I'm worried about somebody pocketing one of those and still having an active employee ID and being able to fill something else up that they're not that would appear to be a vehicle that was surplus.
If to answer, I think I understand where you're going out. If it's an active vehicle, when you come and say that card's missing, it is a standard procedure that old card's deactivated and given a different vehicle number as a replacement number specifically before you enter in. So if that vehicle is still active in our system and the old card was lost for that vehicle, that needs to be deactivated currently in today's procedures before you would activate a new vehicle card.
Okay.
Councilor Entenmann.
Dean, one more question, if I could, please. Over the years, I mean, as fuel prices have fluctuated so much, and looking into the future as fuel prices will continue to do such and get very high and then come back down, have we experienced any problems with theft of city fuel, or do you feel pretty confident that most of your safeguards from an operations standpoint are effective?
You know, I feel very confident that we haven't seen any loss of fuel as far as from theft. Even with the card issues that were there, I believe there was only one card that was still being used by a city department that was not an active, but that card was being used by that department. It just never got deactivated. So even in all the findings, I don't believe there was any fuel theft or loss of fuel due to these cards, but it certainly is something we want to improve upon from a public works standpoint and make sure, and we have cleaned up all of the records as their request was, and basically that just cleaned out all the, old outdated fuel cards for both the vehicle and the employee. We have worked with HR actually in developing the policy where now every termination, retirement, whether it be full-time, part-time employee, we are being notified of every one of those steps in a process to make sure that we don't miss any of those so that we can deactivate all the employee cards as they leave service.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Other questions or comments?
I'd like to point out that one of the recommendations is implemented almost immediately. It had to do with putting on your agendas for your evening meetings. According to state law, we have to put those fuel purchases on the communication. You don't approve them, but it has to be on the minutes of the governing body according to the state law. So that was very quickly implemented. That was on the top of page 7 there. So.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Rich.
Okay, thank you.
I would now entertain a motion to go into executive session regarding personnel matters pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, Section 1.
So moved, Jameson.
Second, Entenmann.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We go into executive session at 4:40.